$20? That is it. That is your price, Kendall. My father was laughing so hard he was practically choking. He pointed a shaking finger at the single bill sitting on the glass table between us. That is exactly what you are worth to this family, he wheezed. Grandpa finally got the last laugh. Next to him, my brother Marcus slapped the table, wiping tears from his eyes. $20. I guess being the boring, responsible one didn't pay off, did it? I didn't say a word. I just stared at the money. While they laughed, I did the math in my head. I wasn't counting the inheritance I lost. I was counting what I had spent on them. I thought about the $15,000 I pulled from my savings to bail Marcus out of jail last winter so he wouldn't have a record. I thought about the $5,000 worth of jewelry my sister Vanessa stole from my bedroom and sold, which I never reported to the police because family protects family. I thought about the 10 years I spent fixing my father's tax returns for free so the IRS wouldn't come knocking at his door. They saw a $20 bill and saw a punchline. I looked closer. Around the serial number there was a thick circle in red ink. My grandfather didn't make mistakes. He didn't do pranks. That red circle wasn't an insult. It was a code. I reached out and picked up the bill. It felt crisp in my hand. I folded it once and slid it into my pocket. Enjoy the house, Dad, I said, my voice calm enough to stop their laughter cold. You are going to need it. Have you ever been the one holding the family together while they treat you like you are invisible? Tell me in the comments where you are listening from right now. I want to see who understands this kind of betrayal. 1 week later, the world turned white. We were trapped in my grandfather's estate in the Catskills, a sprawling stone fortress buried under 3 feet of snow. The roads were closed. The power lines were down. The generator hummed in the basement, a low, dying vibration that made the crystal chandelier in the library tremble. It was supposed to be a weekend to inventory the assets, or at least that was the lie my father told to get me up the mountain. The truth was much uglier. I stood by the fireplace watching the embers fade. My father, Douglas, was pacing the rug, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked 10 years older than he had at the lawyer's office. His skin was gray, clammy with a sweat that had nothing to do with the heat of the fire. Sign the waiver, Kendall, he said. His voice wasn't booming anymore. It was thin and desperate. We can't wait for probate. We need to liquidate the estate now. Tonight. I looked at the document on the table. It was a release form, waiving my right to contest any sale of the property. If I signed it, they could sell the house, the land, and the contents to a private buyer by Monday morning. Why the rush, Dad? I asked, keeping my back to the wall. Grandpa isn't even cold yet. Because we don't have time. Marcus shouted from the corner. He wasn't pacing, he was vibrating. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Stop asking questions and sign the paper or I swear to God. You swear what, Marcus? I turned to him. You'll hit me? Again. He lunged forward, but Douglas caught his arm. That was when the truth finally spilled out, messy and terrified. We owe people, Kendall, Douglas whispered. Bad people. The business. I leveraged it. All of it. And Marcus. He looked at his son with a mixture of disgust and terror. He borrowed against the inheritance before Grandpa even died. $2.5 million, Marcus choked out. I owe $2.5 million. If I don't have it by Tuesday, they aren't going to sue me. They are going to kill me. The room went silent, save for the wind howling against the leaded glass windows. I looked at them, really looked at them. For years I had been afraid of these men. I had flinched at their raised voices, made myself small to avoid their wrath. But standing there in the flickering light, I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. In psychology they call it an extinction burst. It's what happens when a toxic system loses its supply. When a narcissist realizes they are losing control, they don't negotiate, they explode. They ramp up the aggression, the threats, the volume, hoping that the sheer force of their rage will force the victim back into compliance. It looks like power, but it isn't. It's panic. It's the final, desperate thrashing of a drowning animal. My father slammed his glass down, shattering it. You are going to sign that paper, he snarled, stepping into my personal space. You are my daughter. You exist to serve this family. You don't get to say no. He thought he was being terrifying. I just saw a man who knew he was already dead. I can't sign it, Dad, I said softly. Why not? He screamed, veins bulging in his neck. Because you can't sell what you don't own. I walked past him toward the heavy oak door leading to the basement. Marcus moved to block me, his hands balled into fists, but I didn't stop. You want the money? I asked, my hand on the cold brass knob. It's downstairs. Grandpa showed me. The rage on their faces vanished, replaced instantly by a greedy, desperate hunger. The extinction burst had paused. Now the trap was set. The atmosphere in the room shifted so fast it gave me whiplash. 1 second, Marcus was ready to take my head off. The next, he was staring at the basement door like a starving dog looks at a steak. Grandpa was paranoid, I said, stepping away from the door frame. He didn't trust banks. He didn't trust the government. And he certainly didn't trust you. Where is it? Douglas demanded. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, his earlier bluster replaced by a frantic, vibrating need. Show me. I didn't answer him. I just turned and started walking down the narrow wooden stairs. The air got colder with every step. The generator was down here somewhere, chugging away in the darkness, filling the space with the smell of diesel and damp concrete. My grandfather had spent the last 10 years of his life down here. He told everyone he was building a wine cellar. My father never bothered to check. He was too busy spending money he hadn't earned yet to care about an old man's hobbies. I reached the bottom landing and pulled the string for the single overhead bulb. It flickered to life, casting long, dancing shadows against the far wall. "There's nothing here," Vanessa snapped from the stairs behind me. She was hugging herself, her designer coat pulled tight against the chill. "It's just a wall, Kendall. Are you messing with us?" "Look closer," I said. I walked to the heavy oak shelving unit pushed against the north wall. It looked permanent, bolted to the floor. But Grandpa taught me about leverage. I reached underneath the bottom shelf, found the release latch and pulled. The entire unit swung outward on silent, well-oiled hinges. Behind it wasn't concrete. It was steel. A massive, brushed metal door set flush into the foundation. It looked like something you'd see in a bank heist movie, out of place and imposing in this dusty basement. In the center of the door was a digital keypad. Douglas pushed past me, his eyes wide. He reached for the handle and yanked. It didn't budge. "It's locked," he shouted, panic rising in his voice again. "It's locked. What's the code? What's the damn code?" He started punching random numbers. 1234. 0000. The keypad beeped an angry red error tone each time. "Stop," I said. "You'll trigger the lockout. Then open it." Marcus yelled. He was standing right behind me, breathing heavy, smelling like stale bourbon and fear. "Open it now or I swear." "You swear what?" "You'll hurt the only person who knows the combination." I looked him dead in the eye. He flinched. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled $20 bill. The one they had laughed at. The one my father had pointed at while he wheezed with amusement. "You thought this was a joke," I said softly, smoothing the bill out against the cold steel of the vault door. "You thought Grandpa left me $20 because he didn't love me. But Grandpa didn't speak in jokes. He spoke in numbers." I looked at the serial number. 8 digits. Circled in red ink. My fingers hovered over the keypad. 4, 7, 2, 9. I could feel them holding their breath. The silence in the basement was heavy, pressurized. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm. 8, 5, 0. I hit the pound key. There was a heavy mechanical thunk, followed by the hiss of a hydraulic seal breaking. The green light on the keypad flashed once. I didn't even have to pull the handle. The door swung open on its own, just an inch. Douglas didn't wait. He shoved me hard against the wall, scrambling for the handle. "Move. Get out of the way." He ripped the door open, the heavy steel groaning. Marcus and Vanessa were right on his heels, pushing into the small, dark room beyond, their faces twisted with greed. They were expecting stacks of cash. They were expecting gold bars. They were expecting salvation. I stayed back, leaning against the cold concrete wall, watching them rush into the trap my grandfather had spent a decade building. They didn't know it yet, but the moment that door opened, their lives were over. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It wasn't the silence of awe. It was the silence of confusion. The room wasn't filled with gold bars. There were no stacks of cash wrapped in bank bands. There were no diamonds glittering in velvet trays. There were just filing cabinets. Rows of them, gray and industrial, lining the walls like soldiers. In the center of the room sat a large metal table covered in stacks of manila folders. The air smelled of old paper and dust, dry and choking. "What is this?" Douglas whispered. His voice trembled, hovering on the edge of hysteria. He spun around, eyes wild. "Where's the money? Where's the gold?" "It's right there, Dad," I said, leaning against the door frame. "You're looking at it." He didn't understand. None of them did. They were looking for wealth they could spend. They didn't realize they were standing in a graveyard of their own mistakes. Marcus grabbed the nearest stack of files and threw them onto the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. White, yellow, pink carbon copies. He fell to his knees, clawing through them like a madman digging a grave. "This is trash," he screamed. "It's just receipts. It's garbage." "Read them, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, almost bored. "Read the names." He froze, his hand clutching a crumpled sheet of blue paper. I saw his eyes scan the text. I saw the blood drain from his face, leaving him pale and sick in the flickering light. This is my marker," he whispered. "From the track. The one I signed over to. He looked up at me, terror flooding his gaze. How did he get this? Joey, the Knuckles doesn't just hand these out. Joey sold his bad debt portfolio 3 years ago, I said. Grandpa bought it through a shell company. He paid 10 cents on the dollar. Across the room, Vanessa had picked up a small red notebook. She opened it and I watched her knees buckle. She slumped against a filing cabinet, sliding down until she hit the floor. The pawn shop, she choked out. The diamond earrings. Grandma's pearls. He bought them back. Every single piece, I confirmed. He kept the receipts. He logged the dates you stole them, the dates you pawned them, and the dates he reclaimed them. Douglas was standing by the table holding a thick, bound document. His hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled like dry leaves. He didn't need to speak. I knew what he was holding. It was the deed to the house we were standing in. And the deed to the summer home. And the lien on his failing business. Stamped across the front of every single page in thick, unforgiving black ink, was a single word. Purchased. He owned it all, Douglas wheezed. The bank. The creditors. He bought the notes? He didn't trust you to manage an inheritance, I said, walking into the room. The air felt thin, charged with the static of their collective shock. He knew you'd burn through cash in a year. So he invested in the only thing you were good at creating. Debt. I walked past my shivering sister and my terrified brother. I walked up to the table where my father stood, a broken king holding a crown made of paper. I reached past him and picked up the single thin blue folder lying in the center of the table. It was the only file in the room with my name on it. I opened it. Inside was a single document. An irrevocable option contract. I read the clause silently, though I had known it was there since the moment I saw the red circle on the bill. Upon my death, the trustee Kendall Holloway is granted the exclusive, irrevocable option to purchase the entire debt portfolio and all associated assets of the Walter Holloway Trust. I looked at the purchase price listed at the bottom of the page. Consideration, $20. It wasn't an inheritance. It was a sale. Grandpa hadn't given me a fortune. He had given me a weapon. And he had set the price exactly low enough that I could afford to pull the trigger. This is ridiculous. Douglas let out a short bark-like laugh. It was the sound of a man trying to convince himself that gravity didn't apply to him. He tossed the deed onto the metal table, the heavy bound paper landing with a dull thud. Grandpa was senile, Kendall. We all knew it. This little game of his? It won't hold up in court for 5 minutes. He looked at me, expecting me to flinch. He straightened his spine, puffing out his chest, trying to inflate himself back into the role of the patriarch. The king of the castle. It was a performance I had watched my entire life. Whenever he was wrong, whenever he was cornered, he just got louder. He just got bigger. I am the head of this family, he boomed, his voice echoing off the cold steel walls. I built this life. I made the connections. You think a piece of paper and a $20 bill changes that? I own you, Kendall. I made you. He reached for the option contract. His fingers hooked around the edge of the blue folder. I'm going to tear this up, he said, his eyes locking onto mine, daring me to stop him. And then we are going to go upstairs, call the lawyers, and fix this mess. I didn't move to stop him. I didn't even blink. Go ahead, I said softly. Rip it. He paused. The lack of fear in my voice confused him. That's just a copy, Dad, I explained, my tone conversational. The original is in a safety deposit box in Zurich. Another notarized copy is with the estate executor. And a digital scan was uploaded to a secure server the moment I walked into this room. His hand froze. The paper crinkled under his grip, trembling. You can tear that up if it makes you feel better, I continued. But it won't change the math. And you know how Grandpa felt about math. I reached into my pocket. For the last time I pulled out the $20 bill. It looked small against the vast expanse of the metal table. Just a piece of cotton fiber paper with a dead president on it. But in that room it carried more weight than a gold bar. I smoothed it out flat. I placed it directly on top of the option contract. Consideration, I said. That's the legal term. For a contract to be binding, something of value has to be exchanged. Grandpa set the price. He set it low enough that even the worthless grandchild could afford it. I pulled a pen from my pocket. It was a cheap plastic Bic pen, The kind I used to chew on when I was doing my father's taxes at the kitchen table while he watched football. Don't, Marcus whispered. His voice was thin, reedy. He understood. He knew what that signature meant. Kendall, please. Don't. I looked at them. My father, the bully who had shrunk into a frightened old man. My brother, the predator who was now the prey. My sister, the thief who realized she had nothing left to steal. You wanted me to sign a document tonight, I said. You wanted me to sign away my rights. You wanted me to disappear. I uncapped the pen. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. I'm signing. I pressed the pen to the paper. The sound of the tip scratching against the page was the loudest thing in the world. I signed my full name, date, time. I pushed the document and the $20 bill toward the center of the table. Done, I said. The transaction is complete. The room went hollow. That signature wasn't ink. It was a blade falling. Douglas stared at the signed bill as the fury drained from his face, leaving it pale and empty. In that moment he understood he wasn't looking at his daughter anymore. He was looking at his owner. So, what does this mean? Vanessa whispered, her voice small and shaking. I didn't look at her. Douglas was staring at the contract like it had bitten him. It means, I said calmly, closing the pen, the hierarchy of this family has just changed. I lifted the blue folder. It felt heavier than any gold they'd hoped to inherit. You thought Grandpa was hoarding money, I continued. He wasn't. He spent every dollar buying your debts. Every default. Every missed payment. Every loan you took from people who break bones, he bought them. I stopped in front of Marcus. Those loan sharks don't own you anymore. I do. Marcus gagged and collapsed, retching onto the concrete. Fear had replaced entitlement. And you, Dad, I said. Douglas sat slumped, his expensive suit hanging loose. You leveraged everything to look powerful. Grandpa bought the notes. He became the lien holder on your life. His voice cracked. What will people think if I lose the house? Even now he cared only about appearances. You won't be their neighbor, I said flatly. Vanessa sobbed, backing away. You can't own us. I don't want to, I replied. I just want to be paid. I raised my phone. I'm your judgment creditor. I can seize assets, garnish wages, foreclose. I checked the time. The storm's over. You have until dawn to leave. All properties. Douglas protested weakly. That's illegal. If you were tenants, I said. You're squatters. And if you challenge me, I release your company audit to the SEC. His face went white. He knew I knew everything. Marcus stood shakily. What about my debt? You'll sell everything, I said. And until you pay it back, you work for me. Cool. Yes. Exactly what they would have done to me. 6 hours, I said, turning away. That's when Marcus lunged, iron poker raised. Douglas blocked the door. Get the file. Douglas shouted. I didn't scream. I held up my phone. Smile, I said. You're live. The feed showed everything. I explained the fail-safe. Miss a check-in and the footage, documents and fraud evidence went to the authorities. Marcus froze. The poker fell. It wasn't mercy that stopped him. It was math. Move, I told Douglas. He did. I left without looking back. The house behind me went dark, cold, empty. For the first time in my life I felt warm. Sometimes the cheapest thing you can buy is your freedom.